100 years ago, Qatar was mainly a fishing and pearl diving village. And you could even say that in regard to 50 years ago. They really found oil and hit it big in around 1970. And that changed the calculus of everything. Once they hit oil, their ambitions grew. They grew to include a lot of money. They grew to include sports. I talked to somebody yesterday who had been here in 1970, and he told me that there was no paved roads, that there was one building he saw that was 2 stories tall. And now I'm not sure if you can see behind me, but downtown looks like New York or Hong Kong, and various parts of the city feel like Paris and London and Rome, and it's all very built out. Qatar's interest in soccer is really a couple prongs. I think it was first brought here in the 1940s by the British. There were club teams, they became sort of popular. People came to play here when they couldn't get into other leagues. And then I think around 2010 or so, right about when they got the World Cup bid, is when you saw a lot of investments in sports. I think that sports here has really been used as a vehicle, and soccer in particular, to show that this is a country on the rise, to add legitimacy to their efforts, and to earn their place at the table in a region where there is absolutely a ton of money and absolutely a ton of investment in sport. In 2010, Qatar was named the host of this 2022 World Cup, and it was unusual for a million different reasons. To start with, there were allegations of bribes and corruption. They moved this tournament 2 months because it's so hot here that it had to be right now. You add to that, this is a country that was essentially one city, even a few years ago. Basically they took what was already a country with existing infrastructure, but built it out exponentially. And now the opulence here is almost hard to describe. It is big time money, marble everything. The metro is pretty awesome here. It's free for people who are here for the World Cup. That didn't exist 5 years ago. Then you look at all the stadiums, that they built 8. They are palatial, if not unfinished. A lot of Wi-Fi issues, a lot of concessions issues. But when I was at the opener up in Al Khor, there was a ceiling tapestry at the stadium. And so there's all these touches here, but it just all feels sort of incomplete. And I think that's the product of, you have to essentially build out the infrastructure that exists in every other place the World Cup has been for the most part. And you have to do it very fast, and you have to do it at a very steep cost, which is, the deaths of thousands of migrant workers. The human rights issues that have stuck to Qatar since they were given the World Cup are long and predate this process, but it definitely accelerated it. 90% of the population here is made up of people from somewhere else, and the vast majority of them work for other people. So, for instance, every cab I take, the driver tends to be from India or Pakistan. Every coffee I get tends to be Filipino workers in the shops. In addition, from Nepal and Kenya and elsewhere, there have been thousands of migrant workers who have come over. They've been lured by recruitment fees. They were never paid. Many landed deep in debt. And the highest estimate I've seen for the number of deaths is from The Guardian, and they estimated 6,500 just for the stadiums alone. This is just a country where people come here to work. In many instances, they're going to make more and be able to send more money home. But, these are brutal conditions. You're talking about working in the desert in 120-degree heat. I've heard stories of migrant workers begging for cold water. They live in camps stacked on top of each other. They go home with more debt than they started with, and a lot of them died. And so to me, there's sort of a contrast that's in play for the whole entire World Cup. I go to these stadiums and I watch the matches, and everywhere I go, I can't help but think of what it took to make this thing. How many lives, what the cost was. But it's not just the workers. It's, it's illegal to be LGBTQ community here. Women here have no rights. And this is a place with a privileged class that is incredibly privileged. Most of the locals here don't work. They're subsidized by the government. Their lives are pretty much paid for, and that helps, essentially the system to continue. And what we've seen a lot at this World Cup is a lot of misdirection. I wrote the other day about the beer ban. To me, it wasn't about the beer. It was a way to say that Western types are thirsty for their hops and distract from the fact that who's really in charge here is the Qatari government. It's not FIFA. It's not any of the executives there. We are here under their rules, and we are here under their laws, and it's something I'm cognizant of every second of every day. Most of my life, I've been writing about sports for 20 years all over the world. And I think in some ways I still subscribe to that thought, that sports can be unifying, that it can bridge gaps. That said, what we've seen more and more lately is that countries like this that are growing exponentially, that are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, that are trying to get respect, are trying to do that by using this notion that I think is true in some ways, but twisting it to their aims. The whole goal is to show a world here that really doesn't exist. It's just a mirage or a vision of what they want you to think that this place is. There's real beauty here. I've had moments that just blew my mind, and I've had moments where I said, what in the world am I doing here? There are no gaps being bridged here. Instead, we're just getting a look at a part of the world where there are a lot of problems. And to be fair, no place is perfect, but I wish that this were grounded more in what Qatar really is and less in what they want us to see. Because when you talk about legacy, I don't think anybody's buying it.